A group of young girls, lined up to be trafficked as entertainment for men, are ferried to a dockyard while government agents watch from a distance. Some stay behind in a surveillance van, guiding the op through hacked CCTV, while the others navigate the water toward the control room of the warehouse. One younger agent, already inside, is disguised as one of the girls. She keeps her head low, acting nervous while asking quiet questions, with her comms tucked in her ear. The tension shifts when Hammer, the target, enters, and the entire room goes silent. Outside, just as the agents move in from their van, they're blocked by a mob wielding sticks and weapons, keeping them pinned. Inside, Hammer and his partner seal the deal. The girls are prepped for shipment to Japan, but before the plan unfolds, Jane steps up on a table and fires into the air, stopping everything. She points the gun at Hammer and calls out his arrest for human trafficking and suspected murder. That's when one of the guards grabs the girl she had befriended earlier, holding a knife to her neck. Jane freezes and doesn't spot the moment they strike her. The shock knocks her off balance, and as her gun falls, she's forced to fight with nothing but her hands. Still dressed like a schoolgirl with a backpack, she rolls through a takedown and kicks off two charging guards, landing a spinning back kick on one before diving for the weapon. But just as her hand reaches for it, a third guard boots the gun out of reach. One of them yanks her up by the hair, dragging a scream out of her, but she slaps him hard, lifts him by the crotch, and slams him through a table. She spits a warning not to touch her hair again. The scuffle keeps going, the cop knocking them down one after the other, but none of them can grab the gun as it keeps getting kicked away mid-fight. Eventually, the gun skids across the floor and lands near Hammer and his business partner, who picks it up, points it at her, and Hammer laughs, thinking it's over. But instead of pulling the trigger, the man turns and reveals he's Lee, another undercover agent. She's stunned. And seconds later, reinforcements storm the place, rounding up Hammer's crew and securing the girls before they can be taken. Jane is pissed that the mission she's worked so hard on has been sabotaged by Lee, who is her superior from another part of the agency. She thinks that Detective Kang, her handler, should do something and not let the credit go to the other cop, but the man's hands are tied. As she storms off, she bumps into the superior officer, who thanks the handler for the support, but she's too rattled to keep it together and throws a sharp insult at Lee. He doesn't take it lightly, firing back that she blew his entire mission. Hammer was just the bait, and the real goal was the Yakuza boss. With that, he walks off, disgusted and disappointed, leaving her standing there with nothing to say. During a high-level briefing, the police brass go over their next big move. Young Jay, the number 2 in Bay's crime ring, has finally agreed to flip in exchange for immunity. But while being transported under protection, their car was ambushed, and he only managed to escape the attack. Now, Young Jay's lost all trust and disappeared, which means the deal's dead and time's ticking before the trial. With nothing solid left, the team suggests putting a 24-hour surveillance on his daughter, a high schooler, hoping he'll reach out so they can grab him. But the top officer, who's been quietly listening the whole time, snaps. He thinks the plan is sloppy and doomed, so he yells at the room to come up with something smarter, fast. As they head out into the hallway, they run into Jane, still dressed in her school uniform, and the man in charge suddenly bursts into laughter. A fresh idea hits him, one he calls a $1 million plan. His niece will go undercover as a high school student and befriend Young Jay's daughter. Her uncle, who's also her captain, preps her for the assignment while she's already in uniform. Jane hates the thought of school and tries to negotiate her way in as a teacher instead, but they both know she's not exactly professor material. She tries to guilt trip him, but orders are orders. She starts her first day and gets introduced to the class, but forgets herself and gives a full-on police-style intro standing at attention. The class bursts out laughing and she quickly catches herself, switching to a more normal tone before being told to find a seat. As she walks down the aisle, scanning for her target, her eyes finally lock on the girl she's been sent to watch. Just then, a clueless boy sticks out his leg and she trips over it, crashing to the ground. The teacher, trying to ease the tension, reminds the class that school friendships matter and that they should all help the new girl settle in. Once the teacher leaves, Jane's seatmate throws a comment she doesn't like and she claps back by insinuating she's got some kind of infection. The girl bursts into tears and runs off to get the school's female gang leader. Moments later, the leader storms in with her crew, ready to put the new girl in her place. They taunt Jane, shove her head around, and threaten her, telling her to meet them at a corner or face worse later. But as they strut off, she coolly calls them back, asking for the location again, making it clear she's not backing down. It doesn't take long, and the next time we see the gang, they're all kneeling, bruised, hands up, some crying, their clothes completely wrecked. At lunch, the cop approaches Seung-hee, trying to sit with her, but the girl's not having it. She doesn't talk or share tables, and walks away as the other girl is still introducing herself. Right after, Kong slides into the empty seat. He's a fresh transfer too, and so good looking that the new student freezes and her jaw drops. Before she can say much, her seatmate from earlier shows up with an apology and asks if Jane can protect her now. In class, the teacher picks Seung-hee to solve a math problem, but she fumbles even though she's the best student in class. Hoping to save face, the teacher turns to Jane since her file claims she was the best student at her former school. She's caught off guard, drags herself to the chalkboard, completely blank. Luckily, the bell rings just in time to save her from full embarrassment. She storms out and scolds her boss for setting her up to be humiliated, and he turns that heat on the handler for always doing too much. Later, the handler shows his colleague to her new place, which is obnoxiously extra, but she has no choice but to settle in. She tries to bond with her target, who lives nearby, and invites her over, but the girl, wearing earpieces, didn't hear a thing. She makes it clear she wasn't listening and walks off without a word. Left alone, Jane chills on the balcony and reads her target's file. Once lively, but withdrawn. Ever since her mom died of cancer, she's startled when her neighbor, Kang, speaks from the next balcony, so she quickly hides the file, though he keeps asking what she was reading. Meanwhile, Bae's just been released from questioning due to lack of evidence and heads straight to one of his hideouts. Inside, a man who crossed him is tied down and barely conscious. Bae toys with him a bit before stabbing him in the stomach, then orders his men to find young Jae before the trial. But when the henchman offers a weak plan, Bae knocks his head aside and walks out, disgusted. At school, Seung-hee gets into it with the female gang leader who raises her hand to hit her, but Kang steps in. The leader doesn't back down until Jane appears, and just like that, she bolts. Later, Kang tries again to talk to Seung-hee, but she brushes him off. The spy's on them from the hallway. She almost gets caught after panicking, and this makes her drop into a full split just as a group of classmates walk in. She quickly plays it off as yoga practice. In the bathroom, the gang leader corners she, teasing her into showing up for a fight with the male gang boss. The plan works, and she gears up for the match, following them to a corner. But first, she heads into the bathroom, where students are hovering around, waiting for the door to be opened. Inside, young Jae is having a tense conversation with his furious daughter, pleading with her to leave the country and continue her studies, but she refuses. The spy senses something's off, kicks the door open and crashes in, accidentally landing with her lips on Seung-hee's. The girl, grossed out, shoves her away immediately. Realizing her target is nearby, Jane scans the area and spots signs of escape through the window. She bolts after him, and in the process, the school gang starts chasing her too. They only stop when she pulls off a slick move, hopping over a gate. She loses her target after a long foot chase when the man escapes in a car. Now, with the team, they come up with a fresh plan for Jane to get close to Seung-hee, stage an attack, and have her save the target's daughter to earn her trust. Back at school, she's punished by her class teacher, forced to kneel with her hands raised while he scolds her for causing chaos so soon after transferring. He demands to meet her guardian before letting her go. Her seatmate clings to her on the way out, begging to follow her home, but they're blocked by both gang factions ready for a fight. Knowing she can't afford to lose time with Seung-hee, Jane strikes fast, dropping the male leader with a kick between the legs and beating the rest into submission. In seconds, the boys are groaning on the ground and the girls are kneeling, terrified. But she's too late as Seung-hee's already been attacked, and it's Kang who comes to her rescue, taking out the men himself. With the plan ruined, the cop quietly hides nearby and watches. Afterward, she walks with them, trying to join in, but Seung-hee only has eyes for her savior. She ignores the newcomer entirely, heading into her house without a word and flashing a warm smile and wave at her real hero. Kang lets out all his pain on the walk home, limping badly from what turns out to be a broken ankle. Jane offers to help, but doesn't go easy, bandaging him with just enough pressure to make him wince, her way of teaching him a lesson. Seung-hee quietly watches from a distance as the other girl tends to his injury. It's nighttime, and she can't sleep. Her mind keeps circling back to his slick moves during the fight, and she wonders where a high schooler learned all that. She gets flustered just thinking about it, tries to snap herself out of it, but then comes a knock at the door, and it's Kang. He walks in, and before long, the two are kissing passionately. She resists at first, but soon gives in, only to jolt awake from the floor. It was all a dream. By morning, another knock comes, and this time, it's real. He's here to walk her to school. She's forgotten she's even supposed to be in class, so she scrambles to get ready and joins him. At school, her seatmate has already told everyone about how she beat up the gang, and she's suddenly the talk of the school. But things take a turn when the new sub-music teacher walks in, and it's none other than Detective of Lee, the same officer who ran the hammer bust. Jane rushes to report it to her captain, but he tells her to keep calm and stick to her mission. She also reminds him that her homeroom teacher wants to meet her guardian. When her uncle finally shows, the teacher complains about the student's involvement in fights and labels her a problem. The captain waits till they're out of sight before scolding her hard, warning that if she doesn't follow orders and stay in line, she'll be pulled off the job. Bay hears about the daughter, but before he can even react, his right-hand woman tells him she's already got someone trailing the girl. That same night, a masked man breaks into Jane's place while she's out, confirms she's a cop, and plants surveillance devices throughout the apartment. At the next team meeting, she argues they should tell Seung-hee the truth about her father and move her into protection before launching a full takedown on the syndicate. The captain shuts it down, insisting that's not how this works. Lee agrees and adds that everyone just needs to stick to their roles. Then he throws in a jab, warning her not to let emotions cloud her judgment again like she almost did on the hammer mission, and that one stings. Later, she's venting about him over drinks with her partner when their class teacher walks into the bar and sees his so-called honor student drinking with a grown man. He loses it, grabs her ear, forces her to kneel, and immediately calls her guardian to share the shame. The captain is furious, fed up with how sloppy his niece has been, drinking while on assignment. He blames her inability to outshine Lee on her emotions getting in the way. Still, as they sit in the car hashing things out, neither notices the seatmate nearby, quietly watching from a corner. After she steps out and the captain drives off, the seatmate approaches, saying she's finally figured her out. Jane tries to clarify, but the girl just walks off. Back at the apartment, she finds Kang straightening up near her door. There's some tension at first, him hinting at something he wants to say but backing out. They part ways for their rooms, but in a few seconds later, they both step back into the hallway, grinning at each other like nothing was ever awkward. Elsewhere, Young-ji's captured ally is dragged before Bae. The crime boss has no patience for betrayal but sees opportunity, sending the man off with a message. Young-jae must show up himself or his daughter won't stay safe, since she's already being followed. During lunch, Jane heads toward a table, but the students already sitting there quickly excuse her. She ignores their judgment and continues eating, until Seung-hee joins her. Rumors have spread that the newbie is an orphan, and worse, that she meets with older men for money. But the target's daughter, having once conceived the idea to do silly things because of her dad, chooses not to judge. She offers kindness instead, saying she understands and extending a hand of friendship, which Jane gladly accepts. Elsewhere, Lee pulls Kang aside, suspicious about his sudden transfer from Japan to a Korean high school, especially when a high-value target is tied to the school. On exam day, the captain arranges for a math tutor to help Jane by solving questions remotely and feeding her the answers through an earpiece. But the tutor struggles, complaining that the test is way too advanced for high school. In class, the student starts acting suspicious, and the class teacher notices. He spots the earpiece and yanks her by the ears and dragging her to his office. There, he scolds her for cheating and betraying his trust, but she reveals her identity as an undercover cop. He doesn't believe her until her uncle walks in. Both officers show their badges, and the stunned teacher throws a weak salute. She's home when a knock comes at the door. It's Seung-hee, holding bottles of alcohol. Now that they're friends, the girl wants to confide in someone and pour her heart out. Without going into too much detail, she shares her father's plans and how she's been told to leave the country. It's hard for her. And even though she'll miss him, she knows she has to take the offer. The undercover cop does her best to comfort her, patting the crying girl and letting her rest on her shoulder. She reports everything to her uncle, and by the next morning, both are at the airport watching the fugitive, waiting for his daughter to arrive. The lady already feels like a traitor, using the trust her new friend placed in her, though she hopes the girl never shows. The uncle, who smokes constantly against her wish, wraps his cigarette in a bag as a sign he's quitting. She's always warned him about shortening his life by smoking, and he wants her to hold on to that stick and show it to him if he ever slips. With a smile, he tells her he'd love to walk her down the aisle someday and hold her kids, which is why he's giving it up. As they step out of the car and get closer to the target, more men show up and a hot pursuit begins. The wanted man bolts into the airport for cover while the captain and his squad rally. It turns into a three-way chase between the syndicate's men, the fugitive, and the police, with only the cops aware it's a three-way chase. Bae's men corner the fugitive, and just as he tries to escape, he's blocked by the undercover cop and her team, which puts him directly between the law and the wrath of his old boss. Right then, a biker tears through the scene and starts drifting, which sends smoke everywhere. and gives just enough cover for young Jay to vanish while the biker speeds off. Lee shows up and opens fire, even though civilians are in the area. He manages to land a shot, but it's not enough to take the rider out, only stalling him for a while. As he rides away, she lashes out at the detective for risking people's lives just to catch a criminal. He shouts back and even raises his gun at her, but eventually walks off. While scanning the area, she spots something the rider left behind. It's the same type of watch her neighbor wears that has its glass cracked. Later at home, she heads next door and casually asks where he's been all day. He also asked about the timepiece, showing how much she cares about the neighbor. Instead of accusing him outright, she just says she'd be sad if he ever lost it, then turns around and heads back into her apartment. The boy enters his apartment, and when he takes off his shirt, he's wrapped with a bandage covering a gunshot. Still rattled, she calls Detective Kang and asks him to look into the boy. What comes back is worse than she thought. The real Kang moved abroad, and the one she's been living next to stole his identity to return to Korea for this mission. She challenges him to a Syrian match, and while they wrestle, she starts throwing questions. He pushes back with a few of his own, but she keeps control. Since she still cares, she gives him one final warning that either he leaves Korea within 24 hours or face arrest. At school, the undercover cop pulls her new friend aside and finally tells her the truth that she's an officer, and the entire mission was to reach her dad through her. She apologizes for everything, but the girl is crushed. As she turns to leave, the captain and the detective arrive to confirm what she's just heard, and they go on to explain that her father's asked for her protection in exchange for testifying against Bae. She listens, but says she'll only forgive the cop on one condition: that she stays away from her. Eventually, though, Seung-hee agrees to go into protective custody. While the task force lays ambush ahead of the trial, things fall apart, and out in the field, the captain is found by Bae's inside man and stabbed in the stomach. The detective drives the shaken officer away from the scene, but on the way, he suddenly turns off course and pulls into a dark, empty spot. He apologizes, explaining that he betrayed the team for the money he needed to treat his wife. Before she can even react, a group of armed men surround the car, drag both women out, and beat them down. She puts up a fight, but gets overwhelmed and is left battered on the ground. Meanwhile, Bae's men recapture young Jae and bring him to the boss. The meeting isn't hostile at first. The Kingpin says he's still open to negotiation, at least out of respect for their past. Then he brings in Seung-hee and offers her father a twisted proposal: fight him in a cage match. Winner takes all, including the girl's fate. The brawl begins fast, brutal, and in no time, the boss takes control. Kang, who never left the country, looks for the injured officer and finds her. He throws her on his bike, and they head off, both set on finding the girl. At the cage match, young Jae turns the fight around, stomping the boss hard in the chest till blood pours out. But just as he gains control, the boss's right-hand woman shoots a poisoned needle into his leg. He weakens fast, and the boss finishes him off with a brutal punch, then stabs him in the stomach. Seung-hee runs to him, holding her father as he bleeds out, with the man only able to mention how much he loves his child. Before Bae can leave, Kang and the officers storm in and start dropping guards. When the crowd grows, she fires in the air, freezing the room. The thugs grab gas tanks for cover, knowing she won't risk blowing everyone, including herself. She drops the gun and charges in, taking out as many as she can while Bae slips away, leaving his men behind. The right-hand woman grabs Seung-hee and roughs her up, which pushes the officer to act. She flies in with a clean kick to the chest, knocking the woman off. And while Kang stays to protect the girl and fight the rest, the cop goes after Bae. She catches up to Bae mid-escape, leaps onto the moving car, and blocks the driver's view, forcing the vehicle off the road into a heap by the corner. She yanks open the door, cuffs Bae to the wreck, and makes the arrest, only for Lee to appear moments later, gun drawn and aimed at her head. He accuses her of stealing the case and makes no effort to hide his betrayal. When Bae promises to pay him double, her shock deepens, but it turns to rage as Lee confesses he's the one who stabbed her uncle. With heartbreak fueling her, she raises her weapon, forcing a standoff. They both drop their guns and go hand to hand, and though he gets the upper hand at first, she digs into what's left of her strength, driven by what he did, and turns the tide. She beats him down and pins him, refusing to let up. Back at the fight, Kang is running on fumes but still holding his own when Detective Kang arrives with backup. Officers flood the scene, arresting every last thug. Young Jae is rushed to the hospital. The corrupt detective who set them up is cuffed, but Jane doesn't hold back. She hits and curses him until she hears her uncle pulled through, and that news alone brings back her smile. Months later, the team is neck deep in a new mission. Jane's undercover again, this time as a nun, blending into a choir, singing Christmas songs. The alert comes in that the target is on the move, so she breaks from the group and gives chase. Just as she closes in, someone else intercepts the criminal, none other than Kang. As the target writhes on the ground, Kang turns to her and plants a kiss. She halts him, first checking his age since the last time she saw him, he was still a high schooler. He's legal now, and when he spots his old wristwatch on her, confidence kicks in. He kisses her again, and this time, she leans in, even as her uncle's voice buzzes through the comms, trying to ruin the moment.